Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. I've got an awesome guest today that we reached out to after somebody sent me kind of a cool little vignette of one of his videos, and it was him teaching people how to tie a tie. And so, no, we're not going to talk to you today about how to tie a tie, but Rob here started a YouTube channel that's exploded. I think you've got over 4 million followers on YouTube. And the title of the channel is Dad, How Do I? Correct?
Yeah. Yep. Thanks for having me on, Mickey.
I appreciate it. So you started this channel. I guess I'll let you tell the story. From what I gather, you didn't have a father in your life as a young man, and as an adult, you decided you were going to start creating content, sharing things that you've learned that you thought would have been cool to know as a young man had you had a father in your life. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. You know, I don't want to throw my dad under the bus and act like he was a horrible father, because I think he started out well. Sadly, we had some turmoil in our family, and unfortunately, he ended up leaving when I was 14. He kind of checked out maybe a year prior to that, year or two prior to that, and my mom wasn't able to take care of us, so I went to live with my brother. I was 14 again, and my brother was 23, which he was just a kid himself, and he was a newly married to his wife, Karen, my brother Rick, and his wife Karen, and they had a small trailer. I tell that story just because, can you imagine? You know, you're a 23-year-old adult, and you're taking on a 14-year-old in this tiny trailer. It was an 8x35 trailer. And my brother built a shelf in the back of the trailer, and that was my bedroom, so to speak, for a couple of years. And yeah, so I think I can empathize with people that maybe have struggled with the absence of somebody around to be able to show them how to do stuff. My brother showed me a lot of stuff, but he was my brother, you know, and so there's certain things. I was going through puberty. It was a tough time.
You still friends with that brother? You guys still close?
Oh, we're best friends. Yep. I talked to him. I'm going out to dinner with him and his wife tonight, and we're going to go fishing next week.
Cool. So what the heck made you decide? I mean, I'm going to start a YouTube channel and just start sharing random bits of wisdom and tidbits about life.
Yeah, I thought of it several years before the pandemic, and I mentioned it to my daughter and my son. I thought, you know, I'd love to be able to just share some knowledge and try to share some nuggets with people that a lot of it I learned the hard way, because I just don't feel like the information maybe you learn in school even is like, this didn't really equip me for the fact that, you know, I got to go out and live in the real world. You know, I don't know how many times I've used algebra, but I would have liked to known how to change a toilet, you know, or how to do some of the stuff that comes up in your life, or how to tie a tie. You know, a lot of that stuff, sadly, we're not equipping people in our school system, I don't think. When I was younger, when I was in junior high, I took home ec, and so I did learn how to do some basic cooking at the time, and it served me well all these years. And so I think that that's important. So anyway, I thought of Dad, How Do I, really quick, just to wrap up. So I thought of Dad, How Do I? I pictured one of my kids in the other room yelling, Dad, how do I? And then I'd come running and, you know, figure out what they needed help with. And so thought my channel would just help 30 or 40 people. And here we are today, still trying to grapple with what has happened to my life.
Do you have a day job still, or are you strictly doing the YouTube thing now?
I'm doing YouTube, but I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and all those channels are growing. So I finally let my job go. I've been in sales for 30 years, and I even shared in one of my videos how the importance of, you know, if something looks amazing, be careful, you know, tread lightly, don't just jump. I wasn't going to give up a career that I'd had for 30 years to go after something that might have been, you know, a flash in the pan. And so I finally did leave my job last December. So I'm doing this full time starting in this year.
You're married?
I am married, been married for 32 years.
So how was your wife when you were like, hey, I think I'm just going to be a YouTube guy now?
Yeah, it's a little scary. I mean, we're 59, so we're close to retirement anyway, and I think we planned well as far as my goal. I think it's important to set goals, and then if you miss them by a little bit, then you still do well. And so my goal was to retire at 60, and so I think, yeah, I mean, it'd be different if I was jumping all in and we didn't have have our retirement savings there for us as well.
I'm sure you're doing all right if you've got 4.5 million or 4+ million subscribers now on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'm doing okay with that. It's interesting because it's based on views,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of I'm still just going to continue to put up content because I think over time the views just continue to grow. But when I first put out a video, I don't necessarily get a ton of views, and that's how you get paid on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thankful for the good sponsors that I have, though. I have some great sponsors that walk alongside me and help support what I'm doing, not only for their brand, but I honestly think that they do it because they like what I'm doing and want to support it.
Do you have any pushback or anybody like, hey, what Rob, you think you're this important that you should tell people how to think? You do a little wisdom chat on Wednesdays. Like, how are you the end all be all? Did you get any, or do you get any pushback like that?
Oh yeah, there's critics everywhere. I've shared before. You could stand on the corner and hand out $100 bills, and people would still find fault with it somehow. I am grateful that I am able to share more of my heart because that was a concern I had when I first started my channel. I told my daughter, I don't want to just show people how to fix things because it's equally as important that people learn how to be good people, because you can be the smartest guy in the room, but if you're a jerk, then nobody wants to be around you and you won't even be able to share your knowledge. So it's important to be a good human as well.
You've got all these people that are clamoring for this information. What do you think that's about?
Yeah, sadly, I think the flip side of my channel going viral and having as many subscribers and followers that I have is I think, and I try to promote fatherhood on my channel the best I can, or in any interview. The importance of dads. I think, sadly, dads have been beaten up a little bit over the past several decades. I think with Homer Simpson and with Al Bundy. That dads are kind of these buffoons that we can kind of make fun of. Dads are important. Moms are important too, but dads are also important. And I think if I can do anything to move the needle to help dads recognize how valued they are, I'd love to do it, because I think sadly, men maybe see them portrayed that way and think, well, why do I bother? And then they end up kind of living up to those low expectations of them.
Seems like there's this fine line between the quote unquote toxic masculinity, make me my sandwich bitch, like that end of the spectrum, and the Al Bundy or Homer Simpson. Like, how do you delineate between being like a strong dad, father, husband, provider? Like that, and of course, not everybody's the same, but why do you think it went so far that way?
Yeah, I don't know. Sadly, I'm a
It
man of
does
faith.
seem like, I'm
I know
sorry.
as I say, I'm a man of faith, so I know I'm not perfect myself, and I can do the best that I can. It's hard. It's a little bit difficult in our society to, and I even did have pushback on the name of my channel. Dad, how do I? Well, I don't need a dad. Well, can we just relax for a second and I'm just trying to share information, and I am a dad and have been a dad and still a dad to my kids. So that's my perspective. You can do what you do. But anyway, it's sad because I think it's a little bit tough for men right now to thread that needle of how do I, what's toxic and what's, being a man and standing up for yourself and standing up for people.
As we sit and look at this and you're talking about people pushing back, that's a phenomenon. So we teach self-defense, and your earlier point that you could hand out $100 bills on street corners and people would still somehow find that you were doing something wrong. like what's your motives, or what's in it for you. It seems like we've gotten so cynical that we as a society, it is, when something like what you're doing comes up, people immediately do look for, well, what's the angle? What's he doing? Just comment on that a little bit. We're kind of talking about that, but I think that's the area I really want to kind of dig into this. Something, let me add one more point to that. Something that we try to instill in the training that we do is this concept of, if not me, then who? And it's societally, I think we've gotten really good at blaming the government or this entity or the schools or media, but we choose what to consume and how to raise our kids, or how to formulate our own thoughts and ideas. Just comment on that stuff a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on a few things there. One thing that I talk about is forgiveness. I talk about you mentioned kind of playing the victim, or I'm owed something. I will share with my dad. It took me forever to forgive him. Sadly, I wish I would have forgiven him sooner, because I didn't realize the freedom that was waiting for me on the other side of forgiveness. And I get that forgiveness is hard. I don't want to belittle what people are going through or what they've been through. I've been through a lot. People have been through way worse than me. People have been through way less than me. But we do have a little bit of a victim mentality, I think, where we're, I can't do it because of this, or I can't do it because of that. Well, you know what? Take charge of your own life. How long are you going to let that kind of rule your life? And I've talked about that a lot, about the energy that it takes to keep that plate spinning of unforgiveness, that I got to keep carrying that baggage into the future. And once you can let that go, boy, there's freedom for you, that okay, I no longer have excuses for why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so I think that's very important. You also mentioned too about what's the motive, why people are cynical with that. And I have to tell you, I just went out to Nashville. Firestone flew me out to Nashville, because there's this woman out there that has basically turned around this high school. It's called Maplewood High School. It's lower income.
Firestone, as in the tire company?
Firestone. Yeah. Firestone, okay. Bridgestone. Yeah. They flew me out there. They're based in Nashville. And they flew me out there because this woman had a vision of kind of turning this high school around. It was going to get shut down. It was lower income. And this woman shop teacher came in, and Firestone partnered with her and kind of turned this school around, and given a vision of, you can make something out of yourself to these kids. And it was just such an inspiring time there. My wife and I both, after we talked to this gal, her name's TJ Williams, that turned that school around, kept it from closing, and given all these kids a chance to make something of themselves. And Firestone walked alongside her, helped turn it into basically a mini Firestone within this school that trains these kids, how to get out of this poverty that you're in. And my wife and I both ended up in tears after interviewing her, because she was talking about feeding them and all this, and she did it just as a matter of fact thing. And I need to feed them because they're hungry. They come to school, they don't have food. I feed them. It was just, my wife and I were like, this lady is remarkable. So all that to say, Firestone, people might say, oh, corporate greed, whatever. What's in it for Firestone? Well,
what's their angle?
I don't know how many people know did this. It's pretty cool. So
I'd love to hear more about her and possibly get a connection to interview her. That does sound amazing. So did you guys speak while you were there, or were you there to interview her for a video that you're producing?
Yeah. So again, Firestone has been supporting me. I was talking about good sponsors that I have, and Firestone doesn't ask a lot of me. They just kind of want to support what I'm doing. And so they flew me out there. I'm going to put up a video about it, and then it'll include the interview with her, and then also interview of one of her students who has turned his life around. This guy was shot. He was in the hospital. TJ went and met with him and said, hey, you got to turn your life around. And he did. And here he's got 2 kids. He works at Firestone. He's just a walking testament to what her vision for this whole thing. So all that to say, yeah, I'll have a video. A video will be coming out shortly on that, and I'm happy to do it because I think it's sharing good news that people need to hear.
It seems like it's so easy. I was involved deeply in politics for a number of years, and I got to the point maybe 12 or 13 years ago that I completely uh, just disconnected from mass media. Not that I was never the guy that like, watched the nightly news, but you and I probably grew up where it was pretty much the norm, where parents sat down at night and turned on whatever the local news anchor was, and you heard about the ball game, and you heard about the fire at the factory, and all these little 30-second, minute, 2-minute vignettes about stuff going on in the world. But now it's like um, a constant bombardment. I don't even know if bombardment, I kind of imagine it like when I envision like media, it's like you're standing in a tornado of debris, and you can't even, like, you see something and it's gone, and then something else comes into your view, or your senses, or they're just bombarded. And if you step into that tornado, it's like you just think the world is this horrendous place. But then you hear about something like what you just talked about, this woman doing, or what you're doing, and it immediately changes our focus. Um, what kind of feedback are you getting? I didn't go through the comments section. I've heard you talk in some of your videos about comments that you've received, but what are you seeing? I'm sure if you've got millions of subscribers, you've probably now received millions of comments.
Yeah, yeah. If you spend any time on my channel at all, reading the comments is worth it because they're endearing. I think a lot of them are sharing their stories of what they've been through, and maybe that they're thankful that I'm there. So it is encouraging to me. I think one thing, yeah, you touched on a few things there too. I think the news, yeah, can be overwhelming, and pretty soon you just think, boy, what am I doing here? This is it's overwhelming, and I can't. How can I move the needle? I have talked about this a lot. One thing that has come to my mind, I feel like people are longing for wholesomeness and for not having their phones in front of them at all times, and actually having meaningful conversations and sitting down for a wholesome meal. But we settle for fast food. It's interesting because in our minds we're like, oh, I got that. I got to look at my phone. I got to look at my phone. And like, boy,
It's
let's
a
have a
disease.
conversation. Sit down and enjoy each other's company, because you can get lost in that vortex of of scrolling through your phone. And I think if we just had the discipline to sit down and go, why am I doing this? Let me put that
That's a good
down.
word to apply to that. It's discipline. Yeah. That's something I do, not to pat myself on the back, but if I'm at a restaurant with you, my phone's in the car most likely, or in my coat pocket or something, but it's not usually sitting on the table next to me. It's actually pretty insulting. I've sat with dear friends of mine, and if they hear this, they've heard me say it to their face, but I'm like, man, am I that boring? Where I look around a table, or we're on vacation. I travel with friends all the time, grown-ups, and there's just 5, 6, 8 adults all staring at a screen, and we're all giving ourselves to that. It's bizarre, actually.
Yeah, it's sad. And I've shared that before too about, if you're a dad and you have kids, the importance of, let's put our phones down. Let's have dinner together and enjoy each other's company. But I think the discipline thing, people are running here, running there, going to sports, doing all this different thing, grabbing a bite. I think we long for that. I honestly do. I think people are longing for those connections, and yet we don't have the discipline to go, I just need to get away from this thing. So it's interesting because we're doing it to ourselves.
I interviewed a guy a number of years ago, uh, one of the owners of one of the largest CrossFit gyms in the nation, and like one of the first real CrossFit gyms. And as I'm talking to him, we were just sharing ideas. I was at a training event, and I'm like, hey, what's your Instagram or social media page? I'm going to write it down so I can look at it. And he goes, I don't have any. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And And he goes, actually, I encourage all of our members to not have any. I encourage all of our members to come to the gym without a cell phone. I encourage all of our members to have their children not get Instagram, TikTok, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, why can't I? And this is leading into a question. He says, how can I promote my business on those platforms, knowing that it's taking these people away from reality, knowing it's disconnecting them from friends and loved ones, knowing that I'm asking them to plug into my stuff. But then, so like the dichotomy, you and I both earn a living using these little things. How do you juggle that in your mind and heart?
Yeah, it's very well said. I think that's a struggle. I think people are going to be there, and so I feel like if they find me there, then I don't promote. I don't promote. Hey, watch till the end. If you watch any of my videos and you see people, and I constantly get emails. Oh, you need to have this hook. You need to. I'm just trying to provide information here, and I've
Well,
even
clearly, it's
shared.
working.
Yeah, I mean, I've even shared that I don't want you to spend all your time on social media. I'm sure that social media doesn't like me for that, right? I'm sure that hurts my algorithm or hurts them promoting me. But honestly, in the end, I want you to get out and play football or get out and play catch or get out and do things. Don't I've shared this story a few times. My son, I went to Central Washington University when I was younger, and there was this apartment section that was kind of the cool place to go to. You would go there and there's people outside playing volleyball, they're playing basketball, they're throwing the football all around this cool complex that has kind of this center area where and then they had, you could play pool in this one little unit. So fast forward to when my son goes to Central and he gets a apartment, he gets one of the apartments in this. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be great. You're gonna have such a great experience. He goes up there and it's crickets. Nobody's out playing, nobody's out doing anything. So my son, he gets his roommate and says, let's go play catch in the courtyard. So he goes out there and they're playing catch, and they end up breaking a window. And so the janitor or whoever was in charge of that comes over to him, and my son's responsible. So he went and apologized and said, hey, whatever we owe, let us know. And he says, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I'm just happy to see people outside playing. So isn't that interesting? That's what we've become. We've isolated ourselves. We sit inside and we have so much media and so much stuff to consume. And when, boy, you're missing out on such a big part of life.
For sure. Was driving on the interstate in the rain at night a couple days ago, and there's a car in front of me that was kind of erratic. So I got to the right of them, and I'm slowly passing them. And as I get up, I look over, and it's a 20-something-year-old kid, young man, and we're doing highway speeds, head down, phone is in his lap at the bottom of the steering wheel. And now I'm driving, so I'm trying to observe but still drive, so I don't want to throw myself under the bus. But I'm looking at him, and I'm counting like 10-second intervals before he'd look at the road. And so he's using like whatever peripheral vision he's got, I'm guessing, because he's not crashing, but he's still kind of bouncing around. And I'm thinking, whatever you're watching, and we all see this every day. And in fact, we're all guilty of it. I talk to people about it all the time. Nobody wants to admit it, but most people are doing things on these devices. But like, man, you're so focused on this that not only are you willing to risk your life, but all these other people out here. I mean, people, that's not just about you. It's not like being an alcoholic or something where you're just hurting your body. Like, you could easily flip that car over and kill a family or a busload of kids or whatever. There are people have written on this. What's the book? Uh, Stolen Focus. Have you read Stolen Focus?
I have
It's
not. Yeah, I
He did a
mean,
deep dive basically into the science and psychology of how social media is robbing us of our ability to literally pay attention to anything. It's a pretty well written uh, book, and it's almost like drugs.
It is. I put off getting on TikTok for the longest time because I thought I just don't want to promote the swipe, 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 swipe. But I also thought, if I'm not there, then how can people find me that maybe can understand what I'm all about? Maybe will want to know more. That's how I've kind of justified it. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, honestly. It's a bit of a struggle because I do believe that our attention spans are being shortened, and I think uh it's just not good. People, I'll have a video, I'll put out a video that's, how to make meatloaf or something, and we're kind of just hanging out together, and I'm showing you how to make meatloaf. Try not to waste your time. Get, how to make meatloaf. And you look at the, it's a 10-minute video or whatever it is, and people were there for a minute and a half. What? You couldn't just hang with me for 10 minutes, learn how to make meatloaf or whatever, I'm like, I just don't get it. I don't. So it's a concern. I worry. I'm honestly concerned about the next generation because I also worry about the fatherlessness, and the fractured families. Who's protecting these kids from, who's looking out for them? I'm sure there's good parents out there that, we got to limit your time. You don't want to do this, but what about all the other ones? And they're seeing stuff at a young age that they can't process. When you and I were younger, it wasn't so easily attained. You might have, had a desire to maybe see some stuff that you probably couldn't have handled at a young age. But now kids, it's just a click away to see pretty graphic
Anything.
Yeah.
I talked to a parent the other day. They were telling me, forgot how the conversation started, but they've got a young kid, and this kid's got a phone, tablet, like 3, 4, 5 year old, and and they limit their exposure to it. And I never owned a computer until I was in my 20s. Not for any reason other than I just grew up where it was not taught in school, and then I was kind of a curmudgeon, and I did stuff on notebooks, and I just didn't have a computer and didn't know how to use one, and so I had to learn how to do that stuff. But their argument was, well, we're afraid that if our kid's not exposed to this, they're going to live in a world where they just will be left behind and will not have all the skills that their peers and other job seekers and I mean, it's true. I mean, people ask their 10-year-olds, how do I do something on my phone? Because that kid is it's a language. They're touching all these little things on these devices that you or I just don't care about.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dilemma. It's, I don't have the answer to it. I'm just pointing out that I feel like this might be a problem in the future, and hopefully, yeah, I mean, hopefully we can try to get our sanity back a little bit with enjoying the little things in life, and going out for a walk and actually spending, the time that we need instead. Because I mean, I'm guilty, like you had mentioned, we're all guilty of, oh, well, that's funny. Oh, that's funny. What 2 hours just went by? What
Sure.
happened? And I
Sure.
struggle honestly with, since I'm on these, these different platforms, I do feel like I want to connect with people so that they feel seen and they understand that it's not just, I don't have a team. I don't have a team doing my stuff. I'm doing it. And so I want people to feel welcome and loved, but at the same time I get drawn in and I'm like, man, I got stuff I got to do. I can't I can't sit here and respond to everybody. And so I try to limit that, but even that takes discipline.
Sure. Let's go back a little bit. You're talking about forgiveness, and that means different things to different people. Is your father still alive?
No, he passed about 8 years ago, I think.
Did you guys have a relationship as you grew up?
So I struggled to have a relationship with him for the longest time with my own kids, and he also kind of isolated himself. He moved a distance away, so that I don't know if it was because it was painful for him to, understand what, or maybe didn't feel like he had the right to be a part of my family. So, um, yeah, he didn't ask for forgiveness for the longest time, and I was kind of waiting for him to, and wasn't. And then I heard that saying that says, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping it hurts the other person. And that was me. I was drinking the poison and hoping that it somehow hurt my dad. And my dad seemed to had kind of moved on. So I finally had to come to grips with the fact that I needed to forgive him, regardless of whether he asked for forgiveness. Because if I was waiting for that, it might never happen. And meanwhile, my life's going by. And so he did finally ask for forgiveness shortly before he passed, a year or two, I think, before he actually ended up dying. He did ask for forgiveness because my brother, the one I went to live with, Rick, mentioned to him that, Dad, you need to let your kids know that you love them and might ask for forgiveness too. So my dad did. We went fishing and we were out on a boat, and he actually asked for forgiveness. But by that time, honestly, it was a moot point for me because I'd already forgiven him, and that's what I told him. Plus, he's older. He was in his 80s at the time, and I felt like when he was asking for forgiveness, it was like I was looking through him, and so I didn't feel like I could beat him over the head with, well, how could you do this? I did try to help him feel a little bit of the weight of what he did. Like, Dad, I was 14 when you made this decision. But he seemed to have, again, being an older gentleman, it's a little bit more difficult compared to if he was a younger man. I might have shared a little bit more with him.
Which, when you think about that, what's the purpose? Just to make him hurt a little bit like you did?
Right. Exactly. And so that's why, yeah, I really let him off the hook. I share about it in my book, and I've had people comment, I thought you were going to nail him. And I'm like, it seemed pointless at that point.
How did you forgive him? That's a part. I think that's the part. That's the thing that people will say, I forgive you, and then maybe 6 months or a month or a week or a year goes by, and the anger, or I heard a therapist one time say hurt is just another word for anger in like a different form, that it pops back up. So was it something you were able to just lay down and move on from, or was it a constant thing where you shoveled some off of you and shoveled some more off, and like, how'd that process go?
Yeah, I my brother Rick, again, we're really close, and I call it coughing up hairballs. It was a process. I talked to him on the phone, and as stuff came up with my dad, like Father's Day, I had turned that into, that's my day. It's not about my dad. And so then I share in the book again that people were some of the older siblings were wanting to honor my dad for Father's Day. I'm like, I can't get on board with this, and so talking through that with my brother, and again, coughing up hairballs, I'd be sobbing on the phone as I was 45 or what have you at the time. Just I can't deal with this. It was just too hard for me to get my head around honoring this man after what he did. Yeah, so it took a while. It took several of those phone calls, several times crying. Again, I shared I'm a man of faith, and so in the morning, in my quiet time, crying, trying to get it out. But I think once the hairball was finally out, I try to encourage people, because there was freedom for me on the other side that I didn't anticipate. I thought I was letting my dad off the hook, so to speak. You hear those, I can't do that. Then they feel like what they did was okay. Well, I don't know. I think for me, it was huge in my life, because it set me free from that hurt and that anger.
How did that upbringing affect your kids' life, your marriage, your relationships?
I didn't have a good example, obviously. And so other than, my mom and dad started out well, and I think my older siblings are a testament to that. But, when I was younger, I did vow that if I ever get the opportunity, I would be the best dad that I could be. I've shared that. But it's hard. It's hard to, life gets in the way, and you do the best you can. And wasn't always perfect. I think one big thing that we always tried to do, I'm married well. My wife is a big part of this, so it isn't, just about me. We tried to be on the same page with our kids and help them understand, hey, I'm for you, and I'm not going to do things perfect. And I think it's important to ask your own kids for forgiveness, because you're not, you're not going to do everything perfectly, and there's going to be a time. And I think that's a good example for them to see that, hey, dad, because I think eventually, well, I know this, eventually they're going to get to be 12, 13 and go, well, dad has always acted like he he knew everything, and I'm seeing that he doesn't. So I think you may as well get ahead of that, because I think that causes rebellion, where do as I say, not as I do. You're under my roof, you're gonna do this. Well, I think that causes a rift between you, where you start, and then that can get bigger if you don't get it back to where, okay, I'm for you. I am 100% for you. I want you to be the best person that you can be. So didn't always do things perfect. Certainly didn't do things perfect, but my kids are my good friends today. We talk several times a week, both of them.
Do you have any grandkids?
I don't yet. I'm looking forward to that, but yeah, my daughter's been married for 10 years, but they've just chosen not to have kids just yet. She had a lot she wanted to do, and she's accomplished a ton. She moved to New York and worked for, I don't know if I should say it, but anyway, she worked for a TV show for a time. But and now she's back here, so I think she's more open to it. She's funny because she's just such a go-getter. She wanted to accomplish all these things. I'm like, Christine, you've done more than most people do in a lifetime already in your 20s. She started a business. She helped me with my YouTube channel. She went to work for a TV show. She's created some short films. She's done all kinds of stuff. So I'm like, cool. I think it's okay not to feel like you have to run 90 miles an hour. And my son's not married yet, but he's been dating for a while.
How do they feel about what you've been up to?
My daughter was a big supporter of it. The channel probably would never happen. She was, Dad, you need to do this. You need to do this, because it was during the pandemic. It was April of 2020 when I uploaded my first video, and she was a big supporter of it. And she helped me a lot with it. And then she wanted to have a normal relationship with me, where we weren't always talking about the channel and what we're going to do next and that sort of stuff. And I get it. It'd be different if I was doing a video about something else, but I'm a dad and I'm her dad, and so right, and so it was tough to be the dad of millions and then also be her dad, and yet she's a part of this. And so anyway, so I think it's done wonders for our relationship that she was able to see that and understand that she just wants to have a normal relationship.
That's cool.
Yeah, real quick. So my son, I called him when it went viral too. He said, Dad, if I was 9 years old and you were kind of chasing this thing, he said, I think I'd have a problem with it. He said, but you did well. If it's something you enjoy, go ahead and do it.
I like that. You wrote a book. I see it behind you.
I did. Yeah.
Grab one there. Let's see that. I didn't know you wrote a book.
Yeah, it's called Dad, How Do I?
Did you just do this? Practical dad advice. Did you coin that phrase? Did you trademark that?
I did not, because I think I heard it from somebody else before.
Okay.
So.
And what's it say on the back? What's the back of that look like?
Oh, it just tells a little bit about the story of what I went through.
Would you read us the back of that book?
Great pain filled my young life, and I vowed that when I grew up and got married and had kids, I would never cause such pain in my children's lives, at least not if I could help it. Oh, sure, I knew I would make mistakes as a dad, but I would never leave my children like my dad had left us. I would never not be there for my kids, never. Sadly, I learned my story wasn't all that unique. So as years went on, my vow deepened and broadened. Someday, some way, when I grew up, I would help anybody who needed a dad. Whenever they needed direction, I would be the type of dad who offered support, who helped them along their way. And that is why you're holding this book in your hands. I hope you find it helpful. Blessings, Rob.
That's cool. How do people find this book?
So it's on Amazon, and it's It's at Barnes and Noble. A lot of times they keep a couple copies in stock at the local Barnes and Noble. So we were just in, where was that one? Kansas City. We were in Kansas City, and I walked into the Barnes and Noble, and they had a copy, so I signed it for
That's
whoever
cool.
that copy. Yeah, so I try to do that because it's fun. You know, it's always cool to see your book somewhere.
Do you have, or are you going to do an Audible version?
There is an Audible version. Yeah, so I was asked to do that as well, and
Did you
there's two.
read it?
Yeah, I read it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was an interesting experience too, because a couple times reading it, because it's so personal. There was a couple times I broke down and cried while I was while I was reading it. So that was difficult. The people that I did it with were great, though.
How long did that take? I've got a few friends that are authors. It's amazing how much goes into those Audible productions.
Oh, it's a lot. Yeah, it was. I think it was at least 2 full days. Um, so it was pretty strenuous, you know. You're reading.
Sipping on tea and lozenges and just,
Yeah, yeah, and then anyway, another little story. My stomach started growling for some reason, and that
oh wow.
book picks up everything. So I ended up having like a pillow, and I think another pillow on top of me, and also my stomach growling.
So that you can hear your hunger pains coming through the mic.
Yeah, so it was an interesting experience. I'm so grateful. I've done so much in the past few years because of this. You know, I was on the Today Show with Hoda and Jenna,
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah, and actually was there in person. So that was, it feels a little surreal at times where I'm like, what has happened to my life? I'm an introvert, I was a master at avoiding public speaking at all costs, and here now I've been asked to speak in public fairly often. So it's been
Has the exposure to it broke you of the lack of enthusiasm about it?
yeah, I like it now. I feel like, you know what, I'm out there now. If you people have seen enough about me now that I don't have a whole lot to hide, I feel like. And so you're going to get what you're going to, if you're going to hear me speak, you're going to get what you're going to get. So there, you can't, I guess, put something on me that I don't already have out there.
Bob, go back 1 second and say that again. You said you're going to get what you're going to get.
Yeah, I think with me, I think you're going to get what you're going to get, because I think, I have enough. You have enough of a track record now. I have enough videos that you kind of know who I am. I don't think you're going to be surprised if I get up and speak and you go, that really, I wasn't expecting that. Well, I don't know what you're expecting, because you've probably seen enough of my videos.
I think you're a good speaker. You're articulate and your point comes across well.
Well, thank you. I think it stems from my lack of self-esteem in my formative years. I went through some stuff, and so I think, and I think having older siblings, and I always felt like, what could I possibly share as the younger sibling? I don't know, what do I know compared to these people that are older than me? And I think that kind of stuck with me. And and if the monster gets bigger and bigger, the more you avoid it. So pretty soon it's like this scary thing. And I remember getting really bad advice about public speaking that, look over the top of the people. Don't make eye contact. And I'm like, that is
So like
awful.
an avoidance tactic.
That's
Yeah.
awful advice. The best thing I ever did. And I remember thinking, I think I'm going to try to actually make eye contact with people. And it's like, boy, that calmed me. It's like, that's just my friend, whoever, and they're nodding, and you kind of look for the friendly faces and it comes across so much better, and it relaxes me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've gotten better at it. I've just kind of had to.
You don't do the old imagine everyone naked routine.
I don't
That
do
was
that. That
always
hasn't
a
worked.
to me. I'm like, why would I want to imagine all my classmates and teachers naked? I remember that one from when I was a kid. That was
Yeah,
funny. That
right.
was funny. So long term, what do you hope to do with this? World
Uh,
domination?
It's kind of getting there. No, it's. I think long term, I think it's good. I'm grateful for the legacy that I can leave. To helpful. And I've shared this before. It's going to be interesting to see 10 years down the road the ripple effect of my channel. I do. It's just going to be interesting because I think I'm providing valuable information that can help anybody and everybody. People early on said I was helping young men. Well, I'd like to think I'm helping more than young men, and I am. People make comments, "Hey, I'm your 80-year-old kid." These grandmas will comment, and it's trying. I hope that. Again, I hope that people learn stuff, but then also are compassionate and help other people that maybe aren't as fortunate to be able to learn these things.
That's the beauty of putting yourself out there, and the suffering you went through. You wouldn't have that story, so you wouldn't be this useful vessel if you didn't have that trial or hardship in your young life. I'm sure you've thought about that. I'm somewhat a student of the Stoics, and I think, like, had you had some picturesque Leave It to Beaver, Ozzie and Harriet life, you probably wouldn't have put yourself out there to share this stuff, and maybe somebody else would have, but maybe not.
Yeah, I think that does come into play. I think because and I was kind of a chubby kid when I was in ninth grade. I was 5'4" and kind of chubby, and then I was 5'11" by the end of ninth grade, and I thinned out, and so I empathize with people that are a little heavy, and I think a lot. You see people making fun of fat people or whatever, and like I cringe at that because I was a fat kid, and I remember how hurtful it was to be called chubby kid. That wasn't good. So I think all that to say that I think having empathy and understanding, and I'm not perfect. Wait, please don't get me. I certainly have my share of
Hey, Rob,
lack of empathy.
I wasn't thinking you were perfect.
Good.
I've met a lot of people. Not one of them yet has been perfect.
Absolutely. I just, but if I can, try to inspire people to be the best that they can be. I think I feel like I've done well if I've done that.
I dig that. Can we chat a little bit about your journey with self-esteem? Like, when did you become aware of, the whole concept of self-esteem is fairly new in the realm of psychology and medicine, for example. It's not like something that term hasn't been around forever. When did you become aware of it? And then when did you become aware that you didn't have any, or that you had a broken sense of self-worth?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was a process just over time. I've read a ton of books too, and that's
so you were out there looking.
I was trying to figure out, why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling or what have you, and kind of got fascinated with understanding kind of what makes people tick. I think, and it's ironic because I think when I was in high school, I was a jock. I played football and I prided myself in not learning things. You go through high school, oh, look at me, I'm really fooling the teacher. I didn't really learn this stuff. Well, look at you, you're now you're graduated and you're a knucklehead. So it's interesting because I prayed about that. I said, Lord, you're going to have to give me a love for reading, because I hate to read. I'll look at a Sports Illustrated, but I'm not going to actually read any books. And now I love to read. I love it. It's just fascinating to me to read about and just learn about what other people have taught. And I think you take a little bit from here and a little bit from there and a little bit from there. And, part of my Wisdom Wednesdays too, people have made a comment, well, that person did this, and so I can't listen to that quote. Well, and I've shared this. I said, if you're only looking for quotes from perfect people, there'd be no quotes. People are gonna not make every move that you would make, and so you take a little bit from each person you come in contact with, take a little bit from each book that you read, and and then leave the stuff that you don't feel like is helpful to you.
How
So I
old were
think
you when you started digging in and reading some of this stuff? Were you in your 20s, your 30s, teens?
20. Yeah, it's 20s as a when I after I got married and realizing I better start figuring some of the stuff out because I've got kids, that I want to do the best to lead them properly, and I didn't want to miss them. So
Sorry.
I didn't want to mislead them, So I felt the responsibility that I need to learn as much as I can about anything and everything.
What were you feeling? You said that you wanted to start reading to figure out why you were feeling or uh, being a certain way. What was it that you didn't like? I guess would be the question.
Uh I really started actually reading the Bible, honestly. I was raised Catholic, and I kind of when I went away to school, I kind of lived how I wanted to live. I rejected all that, and I actually started reading and trying to better understand. And I heard somebody say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because sadly people will not read the Bible because they've met Christians, that treated them horribly or whatever, and or for various reasons. So I started actually digging into the Bible and understanding that I feel like this is actually speaking to me. And so that was kind of a turning point. So I would be it'd be a betrayal if I said I read all these other books. Honestly, for me, it is the Bible, and so I have to share that, because I think I would do a disservice to people if I said, read this self-help book or this self-help book.
I
So all
get,
that.
I like that. I guess my question was this: you said earlier, as we started to talk about self-esteem, that you went on a journey to kind of sort out yourself because of how you personally were feeling about yourself. What does that look like? I guess why I'm asking is a lot of young men don't realize, because they're not introspective, or it's young guys are taught. I was just talking to somebody the other day. Their dad and grandpa both told them, "Don't be a pussy. Don't cry. Don't be a little girl." And so, to most of us, even talking about how we feel puts us in that silo or category that we're not manly or less than. So, does that uh, better formulate the question?
Yeah, I think, especially as you're younger and you're trying to figure out who you are and how you relate to people and stuff, I don't know. I just felt like I lacked in that
Hmm.
area, because I felt like I had a void where, um, just what really is a man, I think, and trying to figure that out as an adult and leading my family. I felt like I needed to, because I knew I fell short of what I thought a man was supposed to be. There's a lot of differences of opinion of what a man is, and I struggled
What,
with it. And I
what'd you
I
find
remember
out? What is a
I,
man?
I think it's boy, if I had the answer to that in this day and age, you really got to tread lightly with that. I don't know. I think I try to share what a man is by actions with my channel. What I believe a man is somebody that not only gently guides people, but also has compassion on those people that aren't necessarily as fortunate. So I think it kind of plays out in my channel. I think what I think a man is. So I think it's more about action than it is, here's the definition of what I think a man is. I think I try to live out what I think a man is.
I like it. One of the mottos of our brand is "Facta non verba," Latin for deeds, not words. So I like where you're going with that.
Yeah.
Show me, don't tell me.
Yeah, and so there's again, I'm getting ready to put out this Wisdom Wednesday, and part of one of the ones that popped up to mind is a Bible verse that says, if I have all the knowledge in the world and I don't have love, I'm like a clanging gong, or a cymbal that's banging on.
Mm-hmm.
What good am I if I don't have that portion too, or that part of it too? You need to not only know how, it's good to get knowledge, but what you do with it. If you beat people over the head with stuff, that's that's obviously not good. You're not helping anybody.
For sure. For sure. Just talking about this, it seems like we spent so much time talking about uh, how to get into a good school, how to have good credit, how to procure stuff, right? It's all about stuff, money that will buy you stuff, uh, stuff that will help us get money so that we can go places to enjoy our money and take pictures of stuff. And like, it's none of it, not none of it, but so much of it. I was at a funeral recently, and very touching grandsons of the man that passed, one by one came up and they said tearfully, one of them started, he said, I didn't write anything down because I wanted to make sure that what I said was what I felt. And basically the synopsis of his couple minutes was, here lies the best man I ever knew, and as I become a man, he's in college, I hope I can emulate the things that my grandpa did. And it was like, wow, that's pretty much like, that's the measure right there. If as you lay there in your coffin and a 19-year-old boy says, I hope that I can be like you and teach my kids or my grandkids the things that this guy did or how he lived. Like, it wasn't my grandfather, who was a successful guy. It wasn't, he made so much money and he had cool stuff, or wow, he had a huge house or a fast car, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But it seems like uh, that's not the stuff that we're trying to pass on.
Absolutely. I have that in my book where I talk about stuff, and if you watch American Pickers, I love American Pickers. It's interesting to watch, but you watch these people, 90-year-old man with a motorcycle he has out in his shed that one day he's going to fix, and he can't let it go, and then you see other people that they're able to let him go so that somebody else can enjoy that stuff, and fix it up or what have you. It's interesting, and I'm sure you can relate. As I've gotten older, and the perspective on stuff is just, if you go to estate sales, you go to an estate sale, I just can't help but ponder as I'm walking through some person's shop who's no longer there, and he has all these different tools and stuff that he didn't take with him. They're left behind. I'm sure they were precious to him at the time. And I have my share of tools too. So I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody for having tools, but you can't help but ponder, wow, this stuff, it's all going to be left behind. And then
Some grimy fingers are going to be digging through your stuff trying to get a good deal on it.
Offering $1 for something you paid $100 for, so it's just,
I tell this one story often. I was in the construction business for years, and we had a client's house had a flood in their basement, and as I got called by the lady to come to her house to look at it, I enter the house. Her husband was in a hospice situation in the living room. They were pretty well to do, and he's all set up with a hospital bed. They were older folks, and I meet him. He was still able to speak and talk, but he was dying. And I go in the basement, and he's got this big office. He was a very successful insurance salesman. So there was like the whole basement was his. There was a big entertainment area, bar, all kinds of stuff like that, card tables, and then a lot of it was his office that he would entertain business people and things like that. And he had a wall of like your YouTube trophy back there. He had a wall of stuff like that. Salesman of the year, platinum salesman, diamond sales award. And he was like this big shot insurance guy. You probably know who W. Clement Stone was. He worked for W. Clement Stone, who wrote some of the first real self-help books in America, like 75, 80 years ago. I'm talking with my guys who are cleaning up this mess, and I asked her, I said, what do you want me to do with all of his stuff? Like, where do you want, that wasn't what do you want me to do, is where do you want me to place it? She goes, oh, put it all in the dumpster, honey. And I'm like, what? And to me, it was like, maybe your kids want some of this, maybe grandkids. She goes, oh no, get it out of here. I disobeyed her and I wrapped everything up in paper myself and I put it in the garage and I just think I wrote on there like dad's work stuff or something. And I had boxes of the stuff, but she probably had her grandkids shovel it in the dumpster later. But it was at the time so jarring to me. I was in my late 20s and I just thought, like, here is the uh like sum of all this guy's life from a work setting, and she knew he's dying, he's got oxygen and IV and stuff running into him. None of these plastic trophies and plaques mean anything, but in my 20 something year old young business guy brain, like, this is the stuff. It was very jarring.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been reading a lot of Ecclesiastes lately, and that's what Ecclesiastes is talking about. And it's Solomon who had everything. Solomon had, I mean, there's difference of opinion whether it's actually Solomon, because it didn't say his name, but he was King David's son. He was the wisest person, up to that point that ever lived, and he didn't deprive himself of anything. And then what was his answer at the end of it all? So, it's vanity. So I think it's just a good reminder not to depress anybody, but the reality is you gotta keep things in their proper perspective. People and your relationship with people, that lasts. Stuff doesn't last. It doesn't. Like you said, this guy's on his deathbed. That plaque don't mean anything. It don't mean anything, anymore. It meant something to him at some point, but eventually, the stuff just gets old. And I shared in my book about my trip to Rome. Rome was the center of the universe, at the time, at one time. And you go there and now it's just a bunch of statues that are falling apart and the Colosseum's crumbling, and it's stuff. So it's a good reminder, I think, just that stuff is temporary.
What's the most important stuff to you? Like literal physical stuff. What do you got? You got like a baseball with somebody's signature on it. You got grandpa's shotgun. What do you got? What's like the most important stuff to you?
What stuff do I have? My Bible. I hate to keep going there, but my Bible is very important to me. If I had to run out, if the place is on fire, I don't have a whole lot of, honestly, heirlooms or anything like that. What do I have?
Well, if you can't, I like that. I like that. Do you like to fish, hunt? You into classic cars? Do you do painting? You do art?
I like to fish because I like the time spent with the people that I'm fishing with. That would be a big part of that. I took up painting recently because I just wanted to see if I could do it. My nephew is a very good painter, and so I have like 3 paintings under my belt, and so I've been toying around with that. That's fun. Again,
What type of painting?
It's all just stuff. Oil on canvas. Yeah. So want to start doing that a little bit more, but I'm having a tough time trying to find the bandwidth because I'm busy. I've got a lot of things happening. Even though I stepped away from my regular job, this keeps me pretty busy with all the different platforms that I'm on and the different and I try to do interviews with people because I think that that's important to talk to people. I think it's good, and people are interesting. I think this conversation, I've enjoyed this too, Mickey. I think
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been enjoyable, and but it all takes time. Right?
Sure.
So I got a limited amount of it, so I try not to spread myself too thin.
I appreciate you taking the time. And this is how I kind of wrap up most of these podcasts. If people that watched, listened, never cross your path, never see your social media, never read your book, what would you leave them with?
Be kind to yourself. I think be kind to yourself. I've talked about critics a lot, and I think we can be our own worst critic. Where if you want to try something new, give yourself a real chance at it. Don't be so hard on yourself, because, and I've shared this before, baby steps, I think, is a good analogy for trying to learn something, because when you're a baby and you're learning to walk, you don't fall down a couple times and go, I'm just not meant to walk. I'm just going to crawl the rest of my life. And so I think if you're trying something new, be kind to yourself and understand that it's going to take you a little bit of time to get good at it. Give yourself a real shot. You might not be great at it. Maybe, you want to try singing. Maybe you aren't great at it, but at least give it a fair shot and then, then try something else.
I dig it. I appreciate that. I hope you guys that tuned in, listened, viewed, enjoyed talking as well, enjoyed the talk as well. I hope that you take the time to go check out Rob's channels. Dad, How Do I? And buy the book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble. It was in Target for a time, but I don't think it's there anymore. But
you got a web page?
I do, but it's kind of under construction. So I just try to send people to my different platforms. I'm on TikTok at the Real Dad How Do I. I'm on YouTube at Dad How Do I, Facebook at Dad How Do I, and Instagram at Dad How Do I.
Very cool. I appreciate you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you too.
You guys that tuned in, be well. Share this if you dug it. Go check out his stuff. And as always, don't be dickheads. Bye now.
Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com. Hey man, what are you doing in the podcast room, Steve?
I'm writing a national anthem. It's going to be at folk festivals for Gunfighter Gun Oil.
Oh.
Let me tell you about Gunfighter Gun Oil. Made in the USA. Gunfighter Gun Oil, 100% synthetic. It's gonna last you, baby. Yeah. Gunfighter Gun Oil is the best I've ever seen. It's gonna make you get everything that you've ever seen. Oh, baby, I love me some Gunfighter Gun Oil. Yeah. Oh, Gunfighter Gun Oil. Gunfighter.
Gonna get my lighter out. I don't have it.
It wasn't even Bob Dylan. It was like a love story.